Hello guys, so now we shall be discussing regarding the vagus nerve anatomy. So before we discuss regarding the vagus nerve, first of all let me draw some structures from where this vagus nerve comes out and to which structures does it supply. First of all, you know that vagus nerve comes out of your medulla oblongata, right? So it comes out between inferior cerebellar peduncle and the olives. Okay, between the inferior cerebellar peduncle and the olives, this vagus nerve comes out. So first of all, let me draw these structures over here so that you will understand it better. Now this particular structure which I am drawing is your, see, let me put a midline. I am only drawing one half of the medulla oblongata over here. This particular structure over here is your inferior surface of your medulla oblongata, like this. Okay, now here you have got one more important structure like this. This particular structure which I am drawing right now is called as your olives. Okay, what is this structure? This is called as your olives. And this particular structure which I am shading right now is called as your inferior cerebellar peduncle. Okay, so this particular structure over here is called as your inferior cerebellar peduncle. So this one over here is called as inferior cerebellar peduncle. This is called as your inferior cerebellar peduncle. Okay, now what are the important structures other than this which you should know right now? So if this is your inferior cerebellar peduncle, down when you go, these structures which I will be shading off, you see this structure which I am shading right now, this particular structure which I am shading right now is nothing but called as your olives. So what did I tell you in the starting? I told you that this starts in between the olives as well as the inferior cerebellar peduncle. So these are called as your olives. Okay. Now before we completely discuss that, you also know that there is one important foramen called that is present just nearer to the midbrain. So exactly here you have got this particular foramen. Okay, so this particular foramen which you can see over here is what is called as your, what is this? This is called as your jugular foramen. Okay, what is this foramen? This foramen is your jugular foramen. Okay, now if you move little bit anteriorly, let me draw one line over here. This particular line which you can see, right? So just beneath this line, I mean actually this is the temporal bone which I have drawn. Beneath the temporal bone, what is this opening called as external auditory meatus? So this one is called as your external auditory meatus. Now beneath your external auditory meatus, you even have got another part of the bone. This bone is called as your tympanic bone. Okay, beneath the tympanic bone, you have got this process called as styloid process. What is this particular bone over here? This bone is called as tympanic bone. This bone over here is called as tympanic bone, and this particular structure over here is called as external auditory meatus. External auditory meatus. This is called as your external auditory meatus. Next, behind this you have got another important structure like this. This particular structure is called as your mastoid bone. Okay, so this is your mastoid bone. This is your mastoid bone. Clear? Now to the mastoid bone you have got a process called as mastoid process. Next, I cannot actually, these are the structures which are present here. So anteriorly downward I have to draw some more structures. Here you have got a bone called as hyoid bone. So this particular bone which I am drawing right now is called as your hyoid bone. Okay, now beneath your hyoid bone you have got one more important structure. This particular structure is called as your thyroid cartilage. Beneath your thyroid cartilage you have got another important structure. This one is called as your cricoid. And beneath your cricoid, what are these rings over here? These are called as your tracheal rings. Okay, beneath this you see these rings are called as your tracheal rings. Okay, now I am drawing a membrane that is present between your thyroid. Okay, let me write down these things. Let me write it down to avoid confusion. So this bone here is called as your hyoid bone, and this one over here is called as your thyroid cartilage. This is called as thyroid cartilage. Okay, beneath the thyroid cartilage, this one is called as cricoid cartilage. and all these are your tracheal rings. Okay, so all these are your tracheal rings over here. Now what I'm telling you is that I'm drawing a membrane that is present between your thyroid as well as the hyoid bone. So this membrane is called as a thyrohyoid membrane, not muscle. Okay, so what is the name of this membrane? This is called as your thyrohyoid membrane. So this is called as your thyrohyoid membrane. In the same way, I am also drawing a membrane that is present between the cricoid as well as the thyroid cartilage, and this membrane is called as a cricothyroid membrane. What is this membrane? This membrane is called as your cricothyroid membrane. This is called as your cricothyroid membrane. And at the place of this cricothyroid membrane, you see a muscle here, right? You see a muscle that is present between the cricoid as well as the thyroid. So this particular muscle over here is called as your cricothyroid muscle. What is this muscle? This muscle over here is called as cricothyroid muscle. So this is your CTM. CTM, okay, let me use another color. No, this is also not visible. Green is little bit visible, right? So C, okay, let me try with the blue. No, let me use the black itself. Okay, so this is CTM. CTM stands for cricothyroid muscle. Okay, what is this? Cricothyroid muscle. Now in front of your cricothyroid muscle, you have got another muscle. Okay, so what is that muscle? See, for example, here you have got this particular muscle, and this muscle comes all the way down, and this particular muscle which you can see is called as your middle constrictor. What is this muscle? You see this particular muscle over here, this particular muscle over here is called as your middle constrictor muscle. Okay, so this particular muscle over here is called as your middle constrictor muscle. This is your middle constrictor muscle. Now after this middle constrictor muscle, the next important muscle which you can see here, see this muscle is actually having two parts. Okay, so one is called as thyropharyngeus, another one is called as cricopharyngeus. So from the thyroid part, whatever muscle is coming down all the way like this, right? So this part of the muscle is called as your thyropharyngeus muscle. This part of the muscle is called as your thyropharyngeus muscle. Next, till the cricoid bone over here, this part of the muscle you call it as a cricopharyngeus muscle. So one is called as your thyropharyngeus and the other one is called as your cricopharyngeus muscle. And down here you have got your esophagus. I hope you are completely okay with this, right? So I hope you understood that this part over here is called as your esophagus. This is your esophagus. So what are the muscles over here? One is called as your, this is what is this called as? This is called as your middle constrictor muscle. After this middle constrictor muscle, so this one over here is called as your thyropharyngeus, and this one over here is called as your cricopharyngeus, and down here you have got this particular one called as your esophagus. Okay, right. Now after that important thing is done, after that these important things are done, let me just write down these names over here. So this one is your middle constrictor, and this one is your thyropharyngeus, and this one is your cricopharyngeal or cricopharyngeus muscle, and down is your esophagus. Okay, now first of all what we'll do is that after drawing all this, see, and this one, you remember this one, what is this? This is called as your jugular foramen, right? I hope you remember this. So this foramen over here is called as your jugular, FOR stands for foramen, jugular foramen. Now what I will do is that I will draw what are the different kinds of nuclei that are present over here, right? For example, let us say there is one nucleus in the green which I am drawing. Okay, so this particular nucleus is called as a dorsal nucleus of your vagus. What is this nucleus? This is called as your dorsal nucleus of the vagus nerve. Dorsal nucleus of your vagus nerve. Okay, next I am drawing one more nucleus that is blue in color. This is called as nucleus solitarius. Okay, what is this nucleus called as? This is called as nucleus solitarius. This is called as nucleus solitarius. Okay, next down here there is one more nucleus. Down here there is one more nucleus. This is called as a trigeminal nerve nucleus, or you can call it a spinal nucleus of your trigeminal nerve. So this particular nucleus is called as spinal nucleus of trigeminal nerve. Okay, this is called as spinal nucleus of your trigeminal nerve. And obviously this is your inferior cerebellar peduncle, which I have already discussed. Okay, now let us start drawing the nerve over here and discuss what are the different kinds of branches which you have. So before we draw, one last nucleus I forgot to mention here. You see this nucleus, this is called as nucleus ambiguous. So this nucleus is called as nucleus ambiguous. I hope you heard of this nucleus. This is your nucleus ambiguous, right? Now, one very important thing I want to tell you is that this vagus nerve, where does it start? Vagus nerve all the way starts between inferior cerebellar peduncle as well as olives. Okay, so exactly in between the inferior cerebellar peduncle and the olives, this is how the vagus nerve starts. And this vagus nerve is entering into which foramen? It is entering into your jugular foramen. The moment this vagus nerve comes out of the jugular foramen, it is going to give two important ganglia. See, there is one ganglia over here and it comes little bit down and gives one more ganglia over here. So what is this ganglia? One is called as a superior ganglia, obviously. Another one is called as your inferior ganglia, right? Now this superior ganglia is also given a name called as jugular ganglia, and this inferior ganglia is given a name called as nodosum. Okay, so what are these two ganglia over here? This ganglia is called as superior ganglion. Okay, or also called as a jugular ganglion. Jugular ganglion. Next, this one over here is called as your inferior ganglion, or also called as ganglion nodosum. Ganglion nodosum. Okay, now after giving these two branches, now this vagus nerve passes down. This vagus nerve passes all the way down here. Okay, so it passes all the way down. Now look what is happening. What is happening is that from this superior ganglion, whatever is there, you see a branch that is coming out of superior ganglion and supplies to your ear. What is the name of the branch? Anything that is supplying to your ear, that is, I mean, the external acoustic meatus. Ear in the sense, here we have got only one thing, that is external auditory meatus, right? So if there is a branch that is supplying to the ear, you should call this branch as auricular nerve. Okay, now one nerve that comes all the way like this, and it goes and supplies to your ear. So this branch over here is called as your auricular nerve. What is this nerve? This is called as auricular nerve. This is called as your auricular nerve. Okay, next, after this auricular nerve, there is another branch. There is another branch that goes up, enters into this jugular foramen and comes up and supplies to your brain. So this branch is called as meningeal branch. This branch is called as meningeal branch. Okay, this is called as your meningeal branch. After this meningeal branch, you see another nerve. Before I discuss this nerve, you know that the vagus nerve gives superior laryngeal branch, inferior laryngeal branch, right? Before giving superior and inferior laryngeal branch, see here, it gives one more branch like this. So this branch passes over the middle constrictor muscle, right? And the name of this particular branch is called as your pharyngeal branch. What will happen later on? This pharyngeal branch will join with some other branches and become a plexus called as pharyngeal plexus. So this branch for now is called as pharyngeal branch. This is called as pharyngeal branch, and pharyngeal branch later on forms a plexus called as pharyngeal plexus. Pharyngeal plexus, pharyngeal branch and pharyngeal plexus. Okay. Now comes the real branch which I told you just now, that is the superior. See, this branch which is coming right now is your superior laryngeal nerve. What did I tell you? Superior laryngeal nerve will divide into two branches. See, superior laryngeal nerve is coming all the way. It divides into two branches. This is one branch, okay, and this is another branch. Now, what is this branch which is entering into thyrohyoid membrane? This is called as internal laryngeal nerve. And what is this branch down which is supplying to cricothyroid muscle? That is called as external laryngeal nerve. So what you need to understand? What you need to understand is that the name of this branch is superior laryngeal nerve. Superior laryngeal nerve is divided into two branches. One is called as ILN, another one is called as ELN. ILN in the sense that is internal laryngeal nerve, and ELN in the sense that is external laryngeal nerve. Okay, it is dividing into internal laryngeal nerve as well as the external laryngeal nerve. Okay, so external laryngeal nerve supplies your cricothyroid muscle. Clear, all of you? Right. Next important thing is that let me draw this picture of the heart. Right. So let us say that right, just a rough picture of the heart. Okay. Now what I am trying to tell you is that here there is one branch. Okay, this branch goes all the way and supplies to the top surface of the heart. Another branch supplies to the bottom of the heart. So this supplying the top surface and the bottom, there are two important nerves. One is called as superior cardiac branch, another one is called as inferior cardiac branch. Okay, so this one is called as your superior cardiac branch, and next we have is the inferior cardiac branch. Why do we need this? Why do we need this is that, you know, cardiac branch, they stimulate the heart or inhibit the heart? They inhibit the heart. Why? Because vagus nerve inhibits the heart, you know this thing, right? So the superior and inferior cardiac branches, they send inhibitory impulses and inhibit the heart. Okay, so what are the different branches we have discussed so far? So we have discussed that this vagus nerve starts all the way between your inferior cerebellar peduncle over here as well as the olives. Okay, and then it comes in between like this, and it ends up in two important ganglia. One is called as a superior ganglion and the other one is called as your inferior ganglion. Superior ganglion is called as a jugular ganglion, inferior ganglion is called as a nodose. Okay, next, this superior ganglion gives out a branch like this. This is called as your auricular nerve. It gives out another branch which is also called as a meningeal branch. Next, inferior ganglion gives out a branch here called as a pharyngeal branch, which later on forms the pharyngeal plexus. Next, here there is one more branch that is coming. This is called as your superior laryngeal nerve, dividing into two. One is called internal laryngeal and external laryngeal. So these are some of the innervations that are given by the vagus nerve. So these are the branches that are given by your vagus nerve. So this is all you need to know, guys. Thank you so much for watching my video. Goodbye.